Get ready for a wholesome adventure, a brotherly teenage adventure where four brothers kick butt together. Just kidding, lies. Everyone's dead and freaking depressed. Get ready for this week on Detecting the Marvelous, where we will be looking at The Last Ronin. I'm Shahara Ghaznavi. We got our hosts here, Matt Ardell and Dan Rosen. What's up? How heartbroken are we? How much did we cry? How are we doing?
A lot.
And then
Awesome intro.
my heart just got broken all over again with that intro.
Yeah, I was like, man.
At first I was like, wait, did we read the same comic book,
You're like,
Shahara?
no,
And then you're
sorry.
like, all right, yes. The one with all the heartbreak and sadness and depression, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a very wow. Like if I've been I dressed up as a Ninja Turtles as a kid and like really enjoyed them. This was very very different from what I was expecting.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was because it really was. Ninja Turtles was like such a big part of my childhood with action figures, the TV show, the movies, everything.
Did you guys
Well,
have
that's
a
kind
favorite?
of.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Did you guys have a favorite? Which one was like yours? Did you have one where they like, oh, they're all, but did you have one?
I mean, so one of the reasons I guess that helped me get into this one is that I think Michelangelo was always my favorite because he was kind of the goofy one for the most part.
Yeah.
I feel like he was the goofy one, always eating pizza.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. There's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for everyone. I mean, I kind of vacillated between Leonardo and Donatello. The nerd and the goody two shoes. I was never a Raph. Raph always pissed me off. But and Mikey is like there's four cardinal directions. You got like Leonardo and Raphael like as the north and the south, and then you got Mikey and Donnie as the east and the west, where they're all like pulling against each other, and it's like that perfect balance of different character types. But yeah.
I feel like it was before there was Sex in the City, where it's like, oh, are you a Samantha or a Charlotte? Now back then it's like, oh, are you a Leonardo, or a Donatello, or like.
We need a BuzzFeed quiz.
Mikey. Like,
they were the Golden Girls after the Golden Girls. It was
that's right. It filled that void between Golden Girls and Sex in the City. It was like, what Golden Girls are you?
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
What Sex in the City character?
Absolutely. I think I'm a good mix between Donnie and Leo, for sure. Like the goody two shoes, but also like a bit of a nerd. I don't think I let myself be as fun as Michelangelo. And I agree with you. I didn't really relate to Raph, but there are some people that definitely do.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, let's see. Do we want to get into some? Which one do we want to start with? History or a little recap?
We could talk. Yeah, with the history, I can get the setup for it because it'll actually. So the history is kind of cool. So I didn't realize that Kevin Eastman, who is the writer of or co-writer of The Last Ronin, also co-created the comic book with Peter Laird back in 1984. And so it's kind of cool. So it is like him coming back to his original character. And so originally it included all our four favorite characters: Mikey, Raph, Donnie, Leo, their master Splinter, April O'Neil, Casey Jones, Shredder, Baxter Stockman, and my favorite brain in the abdomen of a giant buff body, Krang, who's the only major character who doesn't show up here. Perhaps because it's hard not to feel silly when Krang shows up. So he just might not have been the right tone, I think. But so Eastman and Laird, they met in the early 80s and worked on illustrations together. And in 1983, Laird actually invited Eastman to move in with him in Dover, New Hampshire. And so later that year, Eastman was just drawing a masked turtle standing up and holding nunchucks. And Laird laughed at it and wrote Teenage Mutant above the drawing. And that's kind of how it was like born off of that joke. And it was like they're a mix of parody of the new Teen Titans, the Uncanny X-Men, the ninjas from Daredevil known as the Hand, and Howard the Duck. and it was like stir
Yeah.
all that together and you get Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so originally they were going to give the turtles Japanese names, but decided on Italian Renaissance artists because that felt just quirky enough to fit the concept. And Splinter's name, I didn't realize, was a parody of Daredevil's sensei's name, Stick.
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't
Hmm?
make the connection, but I was like, oh right, of course.
Oh,
They're all like
did you
sorry,
make the
they're all,
con? Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was
No,
gonna
no,
say
you
they're
go.
all like jokes on not well, I say jokes, but they're all references to like Daredevil. There's Stick and Splinter and Foot and Hand and
And
Right.
you neither of you read the origin issue, did you?
no.
Oh, we're gonna
No.
have to go back because a young child gets hit in the face with radioactive waste that spills into the sewer and creates the turtles. I wonder who that young kid is.
Right. And
That
so like
gets
and
Oh,
because
it's
that was
straight up
another yeah,
Daredevil.
reference.
Yeah, yeah,
They wanted because he
like Matt
also is like,
Murdock.
oh, and they've got to be altered by something like radioactive material, and so
yeah,
that was the other because they're like, oh, all these things are getting radiated.
yeah. So
Um,
it was the ooze that hit young Matt Murdock in the face, fell
uh-huh.
into the sewer, and created the turtles and Splinter.
No
That's the
way.
real secret of the ooze. There we
Yes,
go.
yes.
It's all connected.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so that's cool. I didn't realize that. I'll have to read the original issues then. Because it's interesting because they did want when they originally created it did have a bit of a darker tone than like the TV show and some of the more like maybe more popular, well known versions of Ninja Turtles now. Um, but yeah, so back in March 1984, Eastman and Laird they founded their own comic book company called Mirage Studios that they operated out of their own home, and they used a loan from Eastman's uncle and a tax refund they got to print copies of their first issue and advertised it in Comics Buyer's Guide magazine. And they sold all 3,000 copies that they printed in the first few weeks, and the comic's success built from there. So it was a pretty quick hit. And to the point that, like in 1987, less than 3 years later, they were licensed to Playmate Toys for action figures, which my brother and I literally had, I think, almost 100 of them growing up in the
Wow.
early 90s. Like, we ended up, because
Wow.
I remember there was once we had a garage sale and we had like, I think we counted like 70 or 80 like different action figures, and like, because we'd have like Rocksteady and Bebop, who I guess also don't show up in this. And we had some of the like, different one because there'd be like the like pizza action, like where it's like Michelangelo and he's throwing a pizza and stuff like that. And so like there's all the different like yeah, like all the different kinds you can get or whatever. And back when like those action figures they'd only cost a few bucks and not be like $20 each, kind of thing. Um, and we clearly weren't the only ones because between 1988 and 92, they sold about $1.1 billion US in Ninja Turtles toys, making them the
Holy,
third best-selling toy figures of all time. I couldn't find out who were the top two, but I imagine Barbie probably number one, and then
for
maybe
sure.
like GI Joe or Polly Pocket number two.
Star Wars is up there too, I'm sure.
Oh, probably yeah, Star Wars. Yeah, that's true. Probably Barbie and Star Wars. Then I would imagine.
Yeah.
Um, And then when the toys came out in '87, they also made a cartoon series to promote the toys, as was the style at the time, which my brother and I also watched all the time. We'd have like, we sometimes, I remember like years ago, we were going through like old VHSs we had, and my parents would have just like taped VHS episodes of Ninja Turtles for us to watch. Because back then, right, you didn't have streamers or whatever. We just had to Shahara, in my day, we had to, do watch VHSs of it. We had to rewind the episode and watch it again. And anyhow,
All
so
the
And
that,
color
sometimes
nostalgia.
your grandma would accidentally tape a cooking show over top of
yeah,
it.
I'd be like, no, Grandma, why? So yeah, and yeah, some of them did cater. So that series lasted about 10 years, and then also at the time in the late '90s, the first Ninja Turtles arcade comes out in 1989.
Wow.
Followed by a couple others until the classic Turtles in Time was released in 1992, which like is a big inspiration for those like side scroller games where you're just kind of going across from left to right and punching the air, and just like a lot of bad guys show up and you hit them for a bit and then they disappear on the ground and then you keep going forward. Including the Scott Pilgrim video game, which is very much based off of and inspired by Turtles in Time. And so yeah, doing all these research really was nostalgia for me because I didn't realize how much Ninja Turtles was such a large part of my childhood. Like,
Mhm.
because also used to play a lot of Turtles in Time, like whenever we were in the arcades or something like that. Um, and there's actually an upcoming Last Ronin video game in development right now.
Mhm.
So that'll be, I don't know if you knew about this, Matt, or
Yeah.
but yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm very excited for it.
yeah, and it sounds really cool. It's done more in like an Assassin's Creed, like God of War style. I think
Mhm.
it's supposed to
Wow.
like a triple A, like a much higher budget, like epic video game than the typical like sort of just like scrolling left to right kind of thing. So that's really exciting because it does sound really cool. Like that would be a really fun one to play.
I felt
Um,
like this would really translate into a movie. Like I was googling before if
mm,
it was already a movie, and I saw the video game, and I was like, oh, it's probably already like been a thing. But the fact that it's coming out is really exciting, and we should play it. I think.
yeah,
Yes.
that'd be. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, that sounds because like having read this, I was like, oh, this, yeah, and then seeing that, I was like, oh yeah, this would be such a good video game. And
Mhm.
so like, although the TV series was lighter in tone than the comics, the first Ninja Turtles movie, which was released in 1990, it was a bit closer to the darker tone, and they used costume design by Jim Henson's Creature Shop to create the
Wow.
turtles and the other ones. And so it was the
Eh,
fourth. I didn't realize it was the fourth highest grossing film of 1990.
mhm.
And
Wow.
it
And don't
broke the
forget, go
yeah.
ninja, go ninja, go.
Go Ninja. Yeah, it gave Vanilla Ice one more hit song. Yeah, it doubled his discography of like songs that people remember. Um, and it broke the world record for the highest grossing independent film at the time because I guess it wasn't a major studio picture. And earned over $200 million worldwide. And then the sequels from 91 and 93 did not do so well. In 1993, it was the Ninja Turtles 3 where they're in Japan and they tried to make it like because they're like, oh, we really need to break into the Japanese market because at the time that was like the big in similar ways that like modern superhero movies will try to like break into the Chinese market. Back then, it was like the Japanese film market, but then it didn't even get released in Japan, and it failed miserably, unfortunately. And I think that's when they were like, all right, no more Ninja Turtles movies for a while. And finally, I just wanted to, one last bit of pop culture is a stage musical called "Coming Out of Their Shells," featuring the Turtles as a rock band.
Mhm.
It toured around the U.S. for 40 shows in
What?
1990. Yeah. And so they had a big promotion on Oprah at one point, and it was sponsored by Pizza Hut.
No
Yeah.
way.
Well, you
Yeah.
can get Pizza Hut pizza with turtle brands on. Now, you are forgetting a very important element, though, Dan.
Yeah.
Turtles on ice.
Oh, I know. I missed that in my research. I didn't realize.
Yeah,
So there's
there was an
I didn't think that.
Icecapades Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles story because it was the 90s. We did it all.
yeah, like before they had the Frozen on Ice and all that. It was Turtles on Ice.
I
Yeah.
cannot believe that. That I cannot believe that at all.
Yeah. There was it was a very different world. We there's all the cocaine. Is all the
Yeah,
cocaine.
And that's
all
what
the
led to
cocaine
it.
infused ideas.
Yeah.
You
They're
know
like, you know what?
what would
We
be
got
really
this
good?
on ice. These
We put the turtles on ice and we get them to fight
Yeah,
Master Splinter and Shredder. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a really great
yeah,
idea. That's a really great
that's
idea.
great. Yeah. But it's wild, like, cause they were saying, like, I mean, it's amazing to see, like, I knew the Ninja Turtles were big. I guess I just didn't realize, like, how huge the Ninja Turtles became, and in a fairly quick period of time, too.
Yeah. And so independently driven too, because like it's like two guys in their house. The way they became toys was this one guy who was kind of like if you watch there's a Netflix documentary, The Toys That Made Us, and they talk
Oh,
about that,
okay.
and it's basically independently shopped around. So they got a lot of money, much more so than most comic book creators did, which gave them
Right,
a
because they
degree of
didn't have
independence.
yeah, because they didn't have they didn't have like a big like Marvel or DC or even like
Mhm.
Image of that size. It was just right out of their home, so they had like full control.
Yeah.
I
Very
remember them
cool.
from my days, like, being on Nickelodeon, like, that was my thing. Of course, that really ages me. You're like, "Oh, you're a baby," but, like, yeah, I remember the Nickelodeon days. That's how I was introduced to them.
Well, I mean, there's and that's kind of why I chose them because there's been so many iterations. Um, there's and they're all valid and they're all true to the generation that experienced them. There's something for of the turtles for everyone.
Yeah.
And
Turtles in
like my
Time? More
turtles in
like
time,
turtles
yeah.
are timeless.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
But like
Sorry,
yeah,
go
like
ahead.
I went to see the original movie with my little brother
Ah,
in the theater. He was a Turtles cartoon guy, I was a Turtles comic book guy, and it kind of met us in the middle,
Mm.
where there was something for both of us. And
Yeah.
that I think has been the thing. Like you don't need to be a classic Turtles fan to appreciate this comic. If you came at it from any of the other iterations, I think it would have, resonated at some level just because of the characters remaining true at their core to all of these components.
yeah.
Yeah. And then the recent Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem movie is so good.
Oh God, yeah,
I
it was
love
just,
that one.
and that they had teenagers playing the teenagers,
Mm,
was so
perfect.
awesome because there's like an energy to it that felt more genuine than you often get
Yeah.
when you have like a 32-year-old playing a 16-year-old.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, yeah, it was really great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it almost broke my heart seeing where that was like the most recent like Turtles Mayhem and like like all they want is to be like teens, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
when they're watching the movie together and then to see this and then it's not until a few pages in where we realize who this is and
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
turtle is the last Ronin and
Well, yeah.
it's shattering.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, do you want me to
Yeah. Take us through it.
yeah. All right. Well, yeah. So I mean, I've always loved the turtles. My first skateboard was a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles skateboard,
Ooh.
which I would ride using my belly because I have no hand-eye coordination. I would spend days creating characters using the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles role-playing game by Palladium.
Ooh.
So I loved them from day one. The book is broken into 5 books, each covering a different era or part of the story. The first book is pretty action heavy. It starts in a irradiated and flooded New York. Manhattan is now an island city. Well, it's already an island city, but it's much smaller, surrounded by very high walls. And we open with a masked turtle crossing the Hudson and infiltrating the facility. He's on a quest to kill Hiroto, the grandson of the Shredder. He cuts a path through the city, uh, destroying cyborg Foot Clan members, only to be thwarted so close to his goals. He's knocked off the building, he's wounded, drags himself to the sewers, about to commit seppuku when he passes out. He's brought back to the old Turtles underground hideout, where he awakes to find out that it was April O'Neil is there. She has a cybernetic arm and leg, and it was her daughter, Casey, who none of the turtles got a chance to know, who brought the turtle back. And that is when, at the end of issue 1, we find out it's Mikey. Um, Now, issue 2 starts filling in the blanks. We find out that a bunch of the turtles died in an ambush. Um, we find out more about how that all went down. It was about the Casey and April were going to announce that they were engaged, and then they drag in the bleeding body of Master Splinter, who's not dead, but he's on death's door. They rush him to the hospital. Raph goes to settle things because he's Raph. And this is part of a violation of a peace accord between the Hamato uh, uh, and the Foot Clan. Carrie, who's very Electra like in her
Mm.
representation here,
Yeah.
goes up against Raph. Raph dies in the East River, and Carrie is put into a coma. So she is in a she. We actually see her later on being preserved by her son, um, for a really weird, like rubbing it in her face, even though she's in a coma kind of way. It's very, this
Yeah.
kid's got
Yeah.
issues. Um, Book three amps up the tension. It shows Oroku's ascension as from a child leader, and his earliest acts being an attack on the turtles. A bunch of Stockman is trying to get Dr. Honeycutt. This is alien. Um, what's he called? Something Oi. It's a robot kind of synthetic being from outer space that there's a point when the turtles go into space, they meet him in outer space. So this is in the comics,
Yeah.
not in the
So interesting.
cartoons. Yeah. But Baxter Stockman wants this alien for its technology. And when he finds he can't have it, he blows up all of his Mouser droids, killing uh, Leonardo and Casey. Mikey gets April, starts to get April out, but then gets caught in the explosion. He wakes up, finds nobody's there. April is gone, and that brings us to book four. Mikey, Casey, and a group of Casey, the daughter, uh, and a group of rebels launch an attack on Baxter Stockman's compound. Stockman now is more machine than man. He dismisses it as an act of just scavengers and lets his robots take care of it, only to find out how mistaken he was. Um, Oroku, who's got a grudge against Baxter Stockman, won't help him because he just thinks he'll is him being an idiot and using his robots to blow stuff up. But during this chapter, we also find out what happened to Donatello and Splinter in a beautiful flashback. Um, we find out the Foot Clan had proposed a peace agreement and then gone back on it, and we're in Japan with the rest of the clan, and they are decimated by the Foot. Uh, and both Splinter and Donnie are killed in this battle.
Mm.
Book five brings the story to a close with Mikey dismissing his illusory brothers up to this point. We don't know if it's because he's almost 100 years old or if it's brain damage or what, but he's been hallucinating his brothers talking to him and giving him grief. He finally confronts them and dismisses this manifestation of his survivor's guilt, and is like, I can't let any more innocent people die. He sneaks out. Oroku's gone full villain at this point. He's got the city in lockdown. Everything is nuts. Mikey breaks into the building. We also find out that Casey is part mutant. Uh,
Mm.
Due to the exposure that but April and her father, Casey Jones, had to the turtles, the mutagen had infiltrated their systems, and thus when Casey was gestating, merged with her as an embryo, so she's got super strength, may have super age, she may be longer lived than a normal human. Um, we wrap up with Mikey killing we think killing Oroku, and dying beside him. Uh, I was in tears, but
Yeah.
that's not the full end. We end later on with Casey studying from a journal of a journal of Splinters that Mikey had given to her. Um, and he had written a message in the and the back page, no peace, KNOW peace, to sort of teach her to be, you can't be angry all the time. And we also see four little turtles sitting in a bowl with mutagen. So there's a new
Yeah.
generation of turtles on the way.
Yeah, that was so sweet and that was very heartwarming.
Yeah, yeah. So what did you guys think of The Last Ronin?
Well, here, go ahead. You go ahead first, Shahara. I feel like I always jump the gun.
Oh no, no worries. I'm always worried because I'm like, am I? Because I always step on. It's like the weirdest thing because it's
No,
like over Zoom or over Face. You're like, oh, how do I not step over somebody's
for sure.
when they're gonna
Feel
talk?
feel free to step. It's quite all right. Feel free to
Why?
step
Thank
on.
you.
Go for it.
I was honestly, it was really really captivating. I
Mhm.
didn't know what to expect coming in because it's like the turtles. So I'm like, okay, cool. It's gonna be like fun. Did not expect it to be as dark as it was.
Mm.
It felt very like they had like swear words in it. Like toned
Mm.
down swear words, but like they said swear words.
Bastard.
Um,
Mhm.
yeah, or like ass or like damn, and I'm like, no, in a comic book, no way.
Yeah, there's
Um,
not one cowabunga.
No
what?
cowabungas, not
No.
even an awesome.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, no cowabungas, no awesomes. And I felt like through every turn of the page I was literally in it and every bit that they were dropping. Like, okay, we hear the voices and then we realize that the voices are the brothers and it's a memory of the brothers and then like all of the and then we learn it's Michelangelo and I'm like, oh, and so I think every beat that was supposed to hit in a
Yeah.
Mhm.
in a way that I was like, this is incredible. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
those were
I
my initial instincts.
Yeah, and I felt it was a real page turner. Like I went through it fairly quickly with like I watched it on or I read it on Hoopla
Yes,
online, but I
same
was
here.
just like constantly like tapping through the pages and like it went yeah, like it went very smoothly. Like I'd
It did.
be really stuck in it and be like, "Oh, like I just like went through like an issue every 10 minutes." So it like just really like in an hour I'd read through it all.
Hmm.
Yeah, but I thought it was very captivating. It was like one of those things where I saw the cover, so I'm like, all right, there's probably like a darker imagining of Ninja Turtles. I was like, oh, I didn't realize how much darker it would go.
Yeah.
Uh but it was really great. And it has like so many of my favorite like sci-fi type dystopian tropes to it, like the evil villain who has to declare martial law at the end to like create a police state, and like the difference, like, oh, here's the one layer of the city and then there's the slightly upper layer of the city, and it's they're like climbing the tower to like get to the main boss and stuff, which is also why like having found out there's a video game coming, like, oh yeah, this will be like a dope ass video game. Like this will be I actually the one main character who I hadn't been familiar with, Baxter Stockman, because I don't know if he ever really shows up in the cartoon or any of the
He's there.
movies.
Yeah.
He is there. Okay.
He's
So
there.
yeah, I
He's
don't
also
remember.
yeah, he's in the movie with Megan Fox. So
Oh,
he's
and
the
that
bad guy
one.
in that. And he's
Oh,
the guy in the new one who the Fly is his dad.
right. Yes. So
So,
that, yeah.
yeah.
So I hadn't, yeah, I think before Mutant Mayhem, because I didn't see the Megan Fox one, Ninja Turtles movie. I
It's
missed
probably
that
for
one.
the best that you didn't see it.
Yeah, that's what I heard. But yeah, so I think, yeah, Mutant Mayhem was the first time I'd recognized him, but or like I guess found out about him. But yeah, so I wasn't super familiar with his character, but I loved, and even like, yeah, the robot Honeycut I didn't remember as much as well. But then even despite that, when Honeycut yeah, like goes up and basically like fries Baxter. I got so like emotional during that. I'd be like, "Oh, Honeycut, one
Yeah.
last hurrah! You did it for them," kind of thing. And yeah, so it was really great, and it's kind because it's kind of cool because like at the end you can kind of see where things are, like, it gives you that, like, a really dark story, but with like just the right amount of like glimmer of hope and like
Hmm.
yeah, sort of yeah, like sort of like things are looking up at the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the because Laird and Eastman both worked on the story because this actually goes back to an original. This is how they wanted to end it originally. Like this was the
Oh,
idea that they had
wow.
many years before, and it just kind of kept getting pushed off and stuff. And then they're like, let's just write this. Or well, they were approached because IDW got the rights to do more Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, so there's currently a run there. They're re-releasing the original Turtles. I just love the art. The art is so like
Mm.
there's so many there's different styles. Like there's like I'd say there's the current they go back to the original art style in some of the flashbacks like when April's learning to walk again or Mikey's flashbacks. They have like a third style which is the interstitial flashbacks
Like
which
the
is kind of
Silver?
sepia toned.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you can
yeah.
tell it's a flashback, and it might not be necessarily his memory, but like when it happened to Raphael or when Donatello
Yeah,
went through that bit.
yeah.
Yeah,
So you have these like visual markers to tell you where you are in the story,
Mm.
yeah.
but they're all like really intricate and beautiful in their own way.
Yeah, do you mind if I make a
Absolutely.
comment about that as well? Because even when when he says that when everything happened, he just started walking, and he just started and that black and white kind of art style.
Yeah,
I
that's
was
the
really
OG. Yeah, that's the original turtle style.
Oh, is it really? Because I found it
Yeah,
hard. I found it hard to read, or
Yeah.
like hard to see what was going on, and I kind of liked that because it for me I interpreted that as it happened and he just tried to forget about it and he's reminiscing about this memory that's really fuzzy,
yeah.
um,
Yeah.
and that's what
Absolutely.
it
Yeah.
was
I
for
felt the
me.
same way. Absolutely. Like,
Well,
yeah.
and I think that's the intent. I mean, I think it's not necessarily as clean as it would have been when they originally released it to speak to that point, but they went back to the grounding roots there. Um,
Mm.
and I love that they used Mikey because this story could have been any of them,
Mm.
but to see Mikey of all four of them laid so low
Yeah,
hits that harder
Because
because
he was
like
like the more goofy, optimistic.
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, as Casey says, "Oh, you're the funny one."
Yeah.
exactly.
And he doesn't crack a joke in the entire book. He's more intense than Raph ever was.
Yeah,
He's self-loathing. He's got survivor's guilt. Like to see somebody so happy become so sad
I,
hurts that much more.
absolutely. I
Absolutely.
I thought it was Raph at the beginning. I think
Mhm.
I agree. It could have been everyone. I think they were completely correct in making it Michelangelo, and they suck for it. Boo!
Yeah.
I hate it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
It hit all the
it's okay.
harder. Yeah. It's true. Yeah. Because I was, yeah, the entire time, like, who would this be? And I remember I was like, I don't know who this is, but it's probably not Michelangelo. Is kind of what my, so the
Mm,
fact that then they did that and then, like, oh, okay, I can see.
Yeah.
And then, like, in the subsequent issues after that big reveal, you can see, like, I see how this, like, how this is Michelangelo and how it goes this way.
Yeah,
yeah.
it's earned. It's earned.
Oh,
I also see.
Yeah.
I picked up the hardcover trade of it and just like sat there smelling the pages because it has that delightful comic book like trade
Yeah.
smell. Like, oh, new book. But I picked up. There's a book set in the time when he's wandering
Mm.
um in Japan that I picked up as well, like the Golden Years it's called or something like that. So it's set like it's a prequel to this that they wrote afterwards that
Okay.
I haven't read yet, but it's like it'll be interesting to see what his character is like in that
Yeah.
because in what triggered him like well they kind of speak to it like the hate just never dies, people are afraid of him, he's sort of driven to attack or to seek vengeance. But yeah, it's such an interesting. Now you say Rocksteady and Bebop weren't in this, but if you look at the image of Casey's gang, there's a
Yeah.
guy with Bebop's glasses and a big guy with Rocksteady's jacket and a mohawk.
That was true. I did notice that. So I was like, the gang has kind of got that vibe to them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just yeah. No, the aesthetic I love, the art I love. It's not as steeped in like callbacks to other fiction. I think they've sort of matured to the point where they don't need to.
Mm.
anymore.
I think,
But
yeah, I think
yeah.
it kind of stood alone on its own in its own like world, which I thought was really cool. Like it's just like it's developed its own world. I mean, there's probably similarities to other, uh, yeah, like just to like other, like sort of sci-fi dystopian type stuff, or maybe even other like samurai or western type
Mhm.
fiction. But there's no explicit references, which is, I guess, what you're getting at, right?
So yeah, and I was going to ask, like, as two people who are sort of more steeped in the cartoon and like even different versions of the cartoon, how accessible was it for the two of you versus somebody like me who like read the old stuff that it was based on?
Do you
For
have
me, I
any
mean, like
thoughts?
other
Or?
than like like I didn't, I wasn't as familiar with like Baxter as I said, or like Honeycutt, but like it wasn't like it didn't take me out. I wasn't like, oh, like I'm losing something out of this. It felt very like I could follow along, and it was cool to see like April O'Neil being like real badass type, kick ass. Like I'm gonna like making plans and like ready to take names kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, this really did feel like its own story. And like, yeah, we're seeing Michelangelo at his lowest and April at her lowest. And I don't know, like you know me, I love like quirky robotic characters, so Honeycutt was like such a joy.
Yeah.
Um so much murder suicide in this one. I think that pretty much
Oh
every death
yeah.
is kind of a like murder suicide pretty much. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michelangelo's was and Raph's was and I believe and Honeycutt's was for sure.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
And Donnie took the arrows from meant for Master Splinter,
yeah,
and
there was
Master
that
Splinter still
yeah.
got hit by arrows too. So yeah, it was like,
That's true. It is. Yeah. I didn't realize that. Lots of murder
yeah.
suicide.
I guess that's just where my brain goes. I don't know what to tell you.
You're
Well, it's that noble sacrifice where they're like,
Yeah.
and I mean, even
talking about
Mikey, he
honor
was
a
like,
lot.
yeah, yeah, it's
Mhm.
the samurai code kind of thing,
Mm.
Yeah.
and and I'm not like trying to glorify that kind of nonsense, but there is a sense of honor there. Like Mikey put himself in the line because at the end,
Mhm.
because when they attacked Baxter Stockman's base, all these civilians got killed, and he's like, this can't happen. Like
Yeah.
Casey's too young, even though April's got that cool turtle tank that Donnie would super love. Like it's just he needed to take that risk on his own so others wouldn't be hurt.
Yeah.
Um, and there's kind of and that speaks to the heart of the turtles. They love, and I mean, I didn't mention it, but and another moment that made me cry is the closing moments for Mikey, where he goes to basically turtle heaven.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. When he sees
that had
his,
that,
yeah, brothers and Splinter and everyone.
yeah, and it had
That
like this
was
sort of
great.
golden tone to it that was sort of idyllic and like paradise kind of feeling.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like there's sometimes where I've seen like that used in other bits of fiction or whatever. Like I don't know if you've seen the movie The Iron Claw, but it kind of has a scene like that where I felt it didn't quite work as well in that movie. Whereas in this, um, I think maybe partly because he's been hallucinating his brothers all the time. Like it is
Mhm.
kind of like this is his reward and his payoff. Like that it's like, oh, he actually is reunited with his brothers in the same way where like if someone dies and then their partner or their spouse has also died before then, you'd be like, oh well, they're with her or they're with him, they're with
Yeah,
them now. So then in the same way it's like, oh, he's with his brothers, he's with his family now. And I thought that
Yeah.
was actually very touching, I found.
And also like the fact that they're younger too, like they're the younger
Mm.
versions of themselves. It's like it's that golden
Yeah,
they're in New York, but it's a pre-polluted, pre-flooded New York.
true.
Like it's when everything was good. It was when it
Yeah.
was the way that it was. And I think that throughout the issue, like you realize nothing is ever going to be the same again, right?
and I mean, we don't know if this is a hallucination. We don't know if this is his like death experience, or if he's really gone to turtle heaven. Like I'd
Yeah.
love
Yeah,
it to be the latter. Like I'd love
sure.
it to be he's gone somewhere to be happy for eternity. But even if it isn't, he has that moment of closure and peace.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Like
Yeah.
he comes to know piece, which is just beautiful.
Yeah. May we all be so lucky as to go to turtle heaven when we die.
Yes.
Very well said.
Not actual turtle heaven, because that'd be full of like grubs and stuff. Teenage Mutant
Oh, yeah.
Ninja Turtle heaven. So
Ninja Turtle heaven, yeah.
Ninja
May
Turtle
we all
heaven.
go to Ninja Turtle heaven.
Pizza for everyone,
Yeah,
every day.
that's right. With pizza action
plenty of
all the
cowabunga.
time.
All right. Well, that was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Last Ronin. I am off to try to skate on a banana board that has Leonardo on it, and everybody, cowabunga.
Cowabunga, dudes.
Woohoo.
You've been listening to Detecting the Marvelous, a Far From Here and ShowbizMonkeys.com co-production. Your producers are Dan Rosen, Matt Erdill, and Shahara Ghaznavi. Music by Glenn Bouchamp and art by Ben Steamroller. Thanks for listening, and remember, true believers, Excelsior!